Paul threw out his box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get when you call him.
All we know is all of them are unhealthy.
You know how my day started, Paul? My kid wakes up and looks me like dead in the eyes and goes, "Were you alive with the Pilgrims?"
That is amazing.
Just at I'm assuming she had some sort of like Thanksgiving drink. I have no idea.
Yep. My son, rather, when he was very young, thought that the world was black and white when I was a kid. Yeah, and that's something I would have thought of my parents. I mean, we always had a color TV. I don't, at least to my knowledge, I don't, whatever. But yeah, that's what it's like getting old. You know, it's always fun being confronted by the person that's going to throw the first shovelful of dirt in your grave. You know?
Oh God.
So, children, they're the best.
Right up until they're not. Anyway, so there was a thing yesterday.
Yeah, can you believe what Google did? It was like, I'm sorry, you mean the other thing.
Google delaying their cook.
I
They should have done like the soup Nazi thing.
Decided to hold off a little on that.
They should have done the soup Nazi. Somebody should have done a soup Nazi logo, but just made the transcription "No cookie for you."
No flock for you.
No flock. Yeah. So what did they delayed that until 2020?
We're not really talking about this, are we? Yeah, 2022. Who cares? It's just. Oh boy.
What else?
A lot of stuff yesterday.
There was.
So I'll ask you a couple of general questions.
Hold on. I want to kick this off with the same way it kicked off for me, which was with a buffering screen, watching the stream that completely collapsed from Microsoft. That was.
Oh, it was. We were covering it live on Windows Weekly. We had a 12-minute period of downtime right in the middle. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos to Microsoft for not figuring out how the internet works.
How I ended up watching it was, like CNET was restreaming it.
I saw your tweet.
Yeah, it's like, all right, here we are.
Yeah, jeez.
Anyways, they're a $2 trillion company. They'll figure out maybe before they hit 3.
Yeah, it's not like they've had a year and a half of like offline, hybrid work nonsense to figure this whatever. All right, so let me ask you some questions, if you don't mind, because I obviously I'm obsessed by this now. Were you surprised in a positive way by anything we didn't already know yesterday? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I know. It takes a little thinking there because there was some stuff I thought they were going to do they didn't, like getting rid of the little tray area down there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's still going to look like window, although they're getting, they're changing what comes off of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like the snap stuff. I
do too.
Yeah, I recognize that it kind of comes out of a power toy type of thing. That's okay. Who cares? That's good. This controversies, the TPM 2.0 chip requirement in particular seems to have people freaking out. Although, as I communicated to our team last night, I don't think this is as big a deal as people are making of it. Although I suspect both you and I will be answering questions on this very topic today when we do our respective.
So I already ran into this because my desktop upstairs was a custom built box and TPM was not enabled by default. And
went to the house and you can do it. And
well, it's the challenge isn't necessarily, I think, the requirement. I think that the bigger challenge is that there's no universal way you say you go click these 3 things and then it's fixed.
Yeah.
Because
worst, yeah, of course.
You got to go into BIOS, and mine was not under. You would think maybe it's under security or whatever. Yeah. No, it was under a weird setting.
Okay. Yeah, and sometimes it's not called this too. By the way, I mean there are other little acronyms depending on the motherboard manufacturer. But yeah, so but here's the thing, right? So we kind of cater to a technical audience, obviously. A lot of those people would be among those who might have built their own computers or might have thought enough of TPM or too little of TPM to have even disabled it maybe. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, this is going to really rub them the wrong way. Well, not for some reason, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. But I think the vast majority of people who would want to upgrade to Windows 11 aren't going to have any issues at all. The number of people that have built their own systems out in the world is very small relative to the wider market. So, but of course, those are the guys we're going to hear from. That's of course, that's the problem. These are the enthusiasts, the ones that want to get started on it now.
They're also the gaming. Like gamers are
Yep.
probably more at a higher percentage likely to be impacted by this because
Yep.
again they're building their own PCs, they're building their own high end devices, and a lot of motherboard manufacturers sometimes will cheap out. Like if you bought a high end gaming motherboard, you're probably fine. But if you bought like a mid grade or a low grade, that's one of the features that's going to get cut.
Yep. Yep. Which is a little troubling. So I kind of went back and forth on this. I still don't have the definitive answer, but there were two big gaming features for Windows 11. One of which I believe applies to Windows 10 as well, and that one is Auto HDR. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They announced that previously coming to the PC. If you look at Auto HDR on their website, it indicates it's coming to Windows 10. I don't believe that one is Windows 11 specific. Although if you look at the Windows 11 announcement, that makes it seem like it is Windows 11 specific. I've heard from some people who said actually it might even be available already, at least in preview. So hopefully that's coming to 10. But the other one, which is called Direct Storage, I think.
Yeah, the direct storage API.
Yeah, it requires very fast and particularly configured SSDs with specific drivers. Is the type of thing a year from now will be no big deal, but in the short term is going to be a little difficult for people because you need that proper mix of things, and there'll be Windows 11 ready PCs or whatever they call them that will
Mm-hmm.
be configured, already with that stuff. So, yeah, so gamers, by and large, I would say probably do want to get on 11 if they can, because let's face it, as we've experienced with the new consoles, it's the best feature. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that rapid explosion of loading time, which is so opposite of how the Xbox experience had been for 2 generations prior, is a huge deal. So that's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's no real big.
There was just a lot of little stuff. A lot of the polish was
Yep.
there, which was good. I mean, I don't want to. People are going to listen and be like, "You guys are down on Windows 11." Like, really not. Like,
Oh, no,
I
no, no,
cannot wait
no!
to get
I love it.
installed.
I love it. I want to go on record again as having said before this. If all they do is the UI, it's great. That's enough. By the way, that's all XP was, and I'm writing an article now about that. Windows 11 is the new XP. I mean, Microsoft intended to merge the 9X and NT product lines with Windows 2000, and they just kind of fell short because of time. And so they
Mm-hmm.
did it in Windows XP, which was released only a year and a half later. And how did they do that so quickly? It's just that the foundational stuff was already in place in 2000. It wasn't really that hard, but the way they marketed a new Windows so quickly right after that was by changing the UI, right, in a very major way. And they thought they were going to be able to continue forward with that, and it would be, remember, there was going to be themes and different
Mm-hmm.
color schemes and all that stuff. And they just they made a bad choice. It was bitmap based, right as Apple was kind of innovating with see-through, glass-like
Yeah.
UIs, hardware accelerated graphics. So they had to recast things after that. It didn't work out, but anyway, but that was the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Very much like Windows 11, I would say. We've got the foundations in place. Good. That's all good. We have 6 years of failing with Windows as a service for them to get that right. I honestly, the biggest positive thing might be this new
The servicing
once
models.
a year, 2 years of support. Very good, very good.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I guess nothing major, right? No major surprises, but I feel great about this thing. I'm really glad. Like I said, I'm sure I've said it before. I'm really glad that they're doing something with it.
The one thing they didn't do that I was hoping we would see, because I saw it in a mock-up at one point,
Mm-hmm.
is putting. It's just the smallest of things. Putting rounded corners on the taskbar, so it looks more almost like a long pill. But
Yeah.
But at the
have it
very
float,
end, it's just rounded to match the rest of the UI.
and maybe just lift it off of the bottom of the
Just
screen
like
a little bit,
2 pixels.
just like the start menu.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. So I actually I really like that a lot. Of course, then you run into it's just like the Mac OS dock. This is more like Chrome OS than Mac OS. I keep seeing people. It's like, oh, they're trying to copy the Mac. It's like, actually, if you compare the three, you'll see that Windows is closer to Chrome OS. But I was thinking, this is kind of goofy, but you could picture them doing this. Curved corners on the displays on Surface PCs, right?
One of them has it.
I was thinking it might too. Maybe the Surface Laptop Go.
Yes,
Is that the most recent one they released?
I think it is.
I'm just saying, that seems like maybe as they were designing these things, that was going to be running Windows 10 or 10X, with this UI.
Oh, 10x,
Maybe
yeah.
that was part of it. Maybe that was the plan.
Yeah. That's an interesting.
So, but next Surface laptop, I mean, when you look at like a lot of this, in fact, if you go to the homepage of our site, which if I could just find, there's a computer that looks like a Mac, and it's probably a Surface Book. It's just a stylized computer. It doesn't really matter. But if you look at the curve on the outside of the display there, and of course on Surface Book you've got the curve on the bottom too, because it has the latch or whatever, the hinge. It kind of it mimics the curves in the software. I mean, I don't know. I think it would look nice.
Yeah, I think it would look nice. It would look nice. So we get our first build sometime next week. We don't know the day. Mike, you probably make it throw a dart and say Tuesday or Thursday.
Yeah.
Typically how they do it.
Channel first. It's not going to have the Android thing, which, by the way, based on Amazon, is kind of worth discussing briefly.
Yeah.
And it's also not going to have what was the other feature?
Teams.
Oh, the Teams chat thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which Dina Bass, right? Dina Bass. There in our industry there are different levels of access to the company, right? So Dina Bass writes from Bloomberg. It's obviously a high-profile, first-class news organization. She gets to talk to Satya Nadella, right? We got to talk to Brandon from the Windows Insider program, so it's a slightly different level of access. But she writes an article about how Microsoft, after getting this access, right? Microsoft putting a Teams button on the taskbar is somehow the exact same thing that got them into antitrust trouble in the late 1990s, and why is no one paying attention?
So I honestly I thought about that. That was where my head went too. It's like, man, they're gonna force everybody, because remember, for everybody listening, they're forcing you with Home, which is going to be the vast majority of consumers. You have to have an internet connection and an MSA. So when you log in to Teams or Windows the very first time, you are now a Teams monthly user, daily user, regardless of your religion or anything else. Like, you are welcome to the fold.
So I'll just go back in time to the arguments, the discussions that we would have had around 1998 or so in Microsoft and what's going on there. And it goes like this, when it comes to monopolies, there is behavior that is fine when you're a smaller company, and then that same behavior is illegal when you're a dominant superpower in whatever industry, right? And so the question here is, does Microsoft have a monopoly on the PC as it did in the late 1990s, or I guess we'll call it the office productivity space, or the, I don't know, chat-based, application space. So obviously not to the latter. And then on the PC space, I mean, saw an article the other day claiming that, Apple Silicon is going to trigger this massive reduction in market share for Intel and Microsoft. So I guess we can't really have it both ways, can we? Windows is still the vast majority of what happens on PC class computers, right? But it's not 90-something% these days. It's probably 70-something. So where's the line? And is that the only way to describe this space? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I can tell you no one's going to go after Microsoft for bundling Edge in Windows. And if that's the case, then why? What's this?
I think it was Slack
who was for Apple. It's okay when Apple does it. I mean, I don't know.
I think Slack put out some content about the bundling of it that was obviously probably going to end up in the New York Times, like when they launched. But
so yeah. Anyway, but Android apps, right? So we've all been sort of assuming that Microsoft has been working on its own Android app emulation, or I call it emulation, right? And that they would use WSL as the basis, and then they went with Amazon. Interestingly, they do have a subsystem in Windows called the Android subsystem the Windows subsystem for Android, which mimics the Windows subsystem for Linux, right? And so you're like, well, hold on a second, isn't that the same thing? I don't know the interaction yet, because they're using Intel technology to make it happen, but only on Intel class computers, right, including AMD. It will still work on ARM.
Does it?
That's what they said. We don't know how. it's not using the Intel stack on ARM. That's all I can say to that. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. And then but here's where it kind of clears the ground a little bit. And I think this is interesting. It's using the Amazon App Store for Android instead of Microsoft curating Android apps on their own, or I guess ideally maybe, or not ideally to some people, integrating with Google Play.
I would say yet.
Yeah. Right. Why not have different stores? I think I like that approach. I got to say, because it offloads the responsibility of the thing that Microsoft does the worst, which is curating its store. Although to listen to them talk about it, it's the most delightful thing they've ever done to customers. I mean, I don't think anyone uses the store, but whatever. A store within a store is kind of a goofy comment. A concept. It's like a web thing embedded in another web thing. It's like coming from someplace else, and they almost have nothing to do with it. But neat. Amazon's obviously done some job of curating. But that's a way to get whatever the size of that collection is. It's no Google Play, but it's a way just to, because that was the question. Well, how are they going to do this? Like how they've been, there's, the Windows Store, the Microsoft Store is the greatest home of farting apps on the internet. I mean, why would you trust these people to do this right? Well, you trust someone else. I mean, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
It's also interesting too, the way they talk about it in the terms of a commerce engine, which, if you think about it on paper, at least, that would fit sort of Google's model that they own the entire experience. They take the revenue. If you buy an app through there, that's additional money for them.
Well, commerce, the bring your own commerce engine thing is interesting because I think it applies on multiple levels. Like obviously, you have a store within a store, so they have a commerce engine, and Microsoft's not getting in the way in that. So if any purchases occur through the Amazon store on Windows, Amazon gets all of that money. But I also take that to mean developers big and small who want to come into the store with an app, have in-app purchases, and they want to use their own stuff rather than Microsoft's payment system, I think, right? I mean, this is what's allowed Adobe to come in with all their creative and document cloud applications finally, right? First time all of those will be in a store, I think.
I think.
So.
And finally, all the Office apps are finally.
I know, what the frick is up with that? Like, that's crazy. Yeah. And by the way, you can't help but cheer it a little bit when you hear it. Office, Teams, I don't remember the whole list, is going to be available in the store. And you're like, but like, how do you launch the store without that stuff?
Yeah.
In the first place, it's crazy,
Yep. We'll see. We still haven't seen everything, speaking quite literally. We haven't seen, although I tweeted out an image this morning of somebody found an image of the full file explorer from I think it was the developer event. And then we still haven't seen the full settings experience. I mean, there's still a lot of things.
That's right. No, that's a good point. Yeah. So that stuff will appear, well, probably not, but eventually will appear in some version in the Windows Insider program. So this program, which has been like drifting in space for months, all of a sudden is going to start lining up to stuff. Each of the channels, we call them channels? Yeah, channels is going to start lining up with something. The release preview guys are probably going to move on to 21H2. We know Dev will hit Windows 11, and then Beta will later in July, I think they said, as well. And so they're going to have to, well, maybe they don't. I don't know. I assume they're going to test 21H2 somewhere.
Which is the other sort of quasi-awkward thing. This fall, Microsoft will release a new build of Windows 10 and Windows 11 side by side. Yeah,
I'm okay with this. There are questions about will there be a 22H1 or something, and we know Windows 10 has 4 more years of support. Yeah, new versions, whatever. I mean, the nice thing about the cumulative update system that they have, it's the one thing they got right about updating. The Windows as a service nonsense twice a year, it's a terrible idea, but cumulative updates is smart because, and I've been doing this. I mean, you can see boxes up here. I've been going through, I did last 2 days in a row before we went on the trip, I've been going through all my computers, bringing them up again, updating them as far as they go. And I see very interesting patterns. I've had computers as old as 1709 that go straight to 20H2. You have some set of cumulative updates and driver updates, of course. And then you go from there to 21H1. And almost every single one of them follow the same path. I mean, if you did that with a Windows 7 computer, you'd be babysitting your grandkids before you finished updating that thing, No, I mean, it was terrible. That's why they had to release. They only did one service pack, if I remember correctly. So they did these. I think they call them quality roll-ups or some kind of roll-up where they basically bundled hundreds of updates over several years into one thing, so you could go from there instead. Anyway, the point of this is all for the next 4.5 years or whatever it is. They can keep updating Windows 10 with cumulative updates. I mean, you don't really need new versions. They probably will be versions, but I think that was half the reason we tested Windows so differently over the past year or so.
Yeah.
Get the feature updates that aren't really feature updates, and then you get the thing 21H1, which is like, I don't even know what this thing is. It's like it installs in 3 minutes. Like, this is not a version upgrade, and yet it is. So, I mean, they
one
can do
of the
those.
mystery we still haven't gotten a full great answer to are the experience packs. They've been testing these, they've been pushing them out, but Windows
No one has
11.
any idea what they are. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. We talked to the Insider guys yesterday. I have to say that was the most content-free discussion I've ever had. But they had this. The problem is we're asking questions that we need to ask of like the core engineering team. Why would these people know anything like that? Like, someone asked about feature experience packs and how does this line up with blah 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 whatever, and they had no. They almost didn't even know what they were. And it's like, this is one of the enduring mysteries of Windows today. Like, this nomenclature popped up in a system about, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, with no explanation. And they started testing it in the Insider program and discussing how this was yet another way to deliver new features. But then the new features they added were like, we added a thing to snip and sketch, and they're like little tiny things. And it's like, well, is this the foundation of something bigger for the future? I mean, I don't know. Nobody seems to, either they don't know or they're not telling us. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out next week.
You think so?
No. I mean,
I appreciate it.
we'll find out eventually. I don't know. Any other?
Sure.
I guess the next big milestone is just getting our hands actually on it. So
Yeah. There are so many comments. I'm never going to answer all the comments today. I'm dreading today, but I like it. And I sort of respect that different people are going to look at this and say, yeah, I don't think this is attractive, but I think some of the things they're doing with, like we see this in iOS, you see this in the next version of Android, the sort of auto coloring of themes and all that stuff. I think it's not. I think it's pretty. I hope. I'll go through the comments and see what the community says, but I'm kind of dreading it. I know there's going to be a lot of pushback on this, but I think it looks nice.
yeah, I like it too.
Yeah, good. I like you too.
Oh,
Yeah.